Welcome, everybody. I am Adeshawa Josh, and this is Africa Matters. This week, we will be looking at a groundbreaking revelation from the World Bank, which says that African women are dominating the business world, contributing a staggering $300 billion to the continent's economy. Then we meet the inspirational 27-year-old chef who defied all odds to set a Guinness World Record, showcasing the courage of small business owners in Nigeria. Plus, we explore the implications of Türkiye's presidential election on its relations with Africa, highlighting its efforts in strengthening partnerships and collaborative projects. The World Bank says that sub-Saharan Africa is the only region in the world where more women than men run their own businesses. In fact, they make up nearly 60% of the continent's workforce, but they are mostly in the informal sector or more likely to work part-time. Nonetheless, these female entrepreneurs contribute up to $300 billion to African economies, and that's an equivalent of 13% of the continent's GDP, according to a recent study. Botswana, South Africa, and Ghana are among the countries with the highest percentage of women entrepreneurs globally, according to the latest MasterCard Index of Women Entrepreneurs. But they lack access to capital for their businesses, with the African Development Bank putting the funding gap at about $42 billion for African women. And that could explain why women entrepreneurs across sub-Saharan Africa make about 35% less than their male counterparts in profit. But that hasn't stopped a 27-year-old chef and female entrepreneur in Nigeria. Hilda Baji is set to become the latest Guinness World Record holder for marathon cooking. She hopes her attempt will surpass the previous record of 87 hours and inspire others. Ramesa Choda has the story.
Counting down to 1, and Hilda Baji proves she can definitely stand the heat in the kitchen. After 100 hours of cooking, the Nigerian chef is hoping to become a Guinness World Record holder.
So just coming from a very, very, very modest background, I just knew that, okay, I need to do something that is basically out of the ordinary to put myself on the map, to put Nigeria on the map, to put young African women on the map, and also just, you know, it's almost like to set precedents for like the generation that is to come after me.
On May 11, the Lagos-based chef began, and she didn't stop for 4 days. Spectators at the scene cheered her on throughout the long days and nights. For some, the excitement boiled over.
I feel so good. I feel so excited witnessing Hilda break the World Guinness Record and creating another record. Oh my God, I'm really so happy. And it's coming from a Nigerian.
She made dozens of Nigerian delicacies, including soups and stews. President Muhammadu Buhari even tweeted that Monday was a great day for Nigeria, and that Hilda's ambition has drawn attention to the uniqueness of Nigerian food.
It would pretty much prompt more people to ask more questions about Nigeria and ask more questions about, you know, our cuisine, and just be more interested in trying it.
Guinness will review all the evidence before officially confirming Hilda's record. But even though her Guinness journey is still pending, she says she has already reached her goal of showing the world that the Nigerian culinary industry is no flash in the pan. Ramesa Choda, Africa Matters.
Now let's hear more from Fatima Babakura. She's the founder and CEO of the Timabi brand and Yara Secrets. She joins me from Gombe, Nigeria. Thank you so much for speaking to us. First of all, let's start with your experience as an African entrepreneur. What has that been like?
Well, thank you for having me. My experience as an African entrepreneur, I wouldn't say that it's very different just because of the day and age that we're in, right? There are more investors looking into Africa and believing that we as African people can actually do it. They see us solving our problems. They see us, finding solutions for, Africa's problems. And so, they're beginning to understand that nobody would be able to solve these problems better than the people who actually know what the problems are. So to be honest, I haven't really seen any major difference in the way that investors or VCs treat African entrepreneurs in this day and age. But I totally understand that back then it was different. Now, yeah, that has been my experience, but it's also, just you proving yourself. You have a track record of things that you've done, and they understand that, okay, this person actually knows what they're doing, and you have things to back it up. And so, when you're able to show that, people actually believe it.
Right, but the World Bank says that women entrepreneurs in Africa are way more than the men. What would you say is driving that?
So for me, I think it's a natural thing. As women, we're known to be multitaskers. So, it's only natural that we're opening up businesses. And, the woman is the one who makes a lot of buying decisions. We know the problems out there. And so, because of, our interactions with, when we make buying decisions for our homes, for whatever reason that we do them, we understand what's going on in the marketplace. And so, more and more women are, taking that power or place to build businesses as it fits, what problems they see out there. So that's pretty much what it is, honestly.
Tell me about some of the business challenges you contend with as a female entrepreneur.
So we all know that, women entrepreneurs generally all over the world, not just in Africa, face a number of challenges. One is, a lot of people not believing in us. Recently, I was reading something about how, when investors come to you, they say, okay, I want to invest this amount of money for a certain period. And they go ahead to ask you, are you planning to have kids? Now, that's a natural thing that, women go through, if you're married and you plan to have kids. But they also understand that, having kids is a lot of work. And so you realize that sometimes women, when they have kids, they take time off. It's why, companies give maternity leaves and all of that. But investors don't, deeply care about that. They only care about their returns. So, that's one challenge, is that sometimes investors only care about, the returns, and they don't really understand.
They don't want to know how you get it, just get it done.
Honestly, the natural struggles of being a woman, they don't really care. So there's that. There's also people believing, but I'm pretty sure that we're changing the narrative now, that, a woman is less intelligent. That has been, historically, right? If we look at it, not getting our place in the workplace, or, the glass ceilings and all of that, not even getting equal pay. So there's that. It's still very existent, but I see that more and more, we're changing these narratives, with the way that we open business, the way that we conduct these businesses, the structure we have in our business. So we keep proving ourselves. The other thing is just not having access to funding, which is a factor of what I mentioned earlier, people not believing in you, so they're not funding your business. And, if you're trying to build something really big, sometimes you actually do need that external, capital, and you can't bootstrap like all through your life, right? So those are a few challenges that I know are very prominent.
All right, and African women typically reinvest up to 90% of their income in the education, health, and nutrition of their family and community, compared to up to 40% for men. What would more support for businesswomen like yourself mean for the continent and the world?
I think you just said it all, right? Just look at the sectors where we're putting back our money. Those are the most important sectors, if you ask me, like anywhere, healthcare, education.
And some people, it's, let me just quickly chip this in. Some people will actually also argue that, the men give them money, in most cases, to the women. So in the end, it still gets from the women back to the family. I'm telling you, that's how some men will argue it. So go on.
So that be the argument, but think about it. It takes a woman who actually understands strategy and decision making to actually do it. Because you could give, people that money and they go ahead and do something else totally different from, healthcare or education. But women understand the importance of healthcare and education, and that's what really builds, a nation, really. If you don't have people who are educated, how do you move? Like, how do you increase employability or even get foreign investors to come in, right? So that's one aspect. Healthcare, if your population is not healthy, how do you build businesses? How do you go to workplace? Like, these are very essential things, and women understand that. And so I think it's very important that, women have access to funding, because, there's a track record. You've said it. There's research out there. There's statistics out there that this is what women are investing in. And these are very crucial parts that, every nation needs to succeed.
Right. Thank you so much, Fatima Bakura, the founder and CEO of the Timabi brand and Yara Secrets, for speaking to Africa Matters. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
To Tanzania now, where drought has forced agricultural laborers to find new ways to support themselves. One of those ways is beekeeping, which has proven profitable for the 2 million people who are now employed in the country's blossoming bee industry. Priyanka Navani reports.
Many people know the expression, when life hands you lemons, make lemonade. But how about when life gives you bees, make honey?
I have benefited a lot from beekeeping. I bought 5 goats which are producing milk for us. I have also bought a bed and educated my children. This year, my plan is to build a house.
In northern Tanzania, agricultural communities hard hit by droughts have taken up beekeeping for extra money. They're given beehives and training from local organizations, and then they're set to go. Beekeeping is both indirectly profitable because it's beneficial to the environment and directly advantageous because of the country's booming honey business.
Previously, their thought was that they harvest honey, then sit and wait for customers during a season. But things are different now, because they can do business all through the year as a result of the value chain.
And new beekeepers say the job is also helping to dissolve stereotypes.
When people see me going to harvest honey, they are very surprised because in our Maasai community, it's only the men who do beekeeping as individuals. So beekeeping has brought respect to us women and trust to us on the forefront. People now know that even Maasai women can do big things.
Hundreds of thousands of Tanzanian households have joined the beekeeping business in recent years. As the effects of climate change and demand for honey continue to grow, it's a number that's only likely to keep climbing. Priyanka Navani, Africa Matters.
And to Ivory Coast next, which is famous for its cocoa beans. International companies dominate the chocolate market, yet female-led entrepreneurs want a bite of the business too. Taibe Aidid reports.
A big slab of happiness. In this small workshop, Ivorian entrepreneur Vivienne Kwame turns her passion for cocoa into profit.
My first contact with cocoa, if my memory serves me right, was when I was 16 or 17. I went to the plantation and I was amazed by this tree. It looked like it had babies on its back because the pods were on the trunk. I saw the process of podding because the cocoa juice is drunk and used for other purposes, such as vinegar, alcohol, or other things. It was at that time that I fell in love with cocoa.
And that love turned into business 2 years ago. Kwame founded Chocovi to locally produce chocolate from Ivory Coast's quality cocoa beans. She employs 5 people, and her company processes about 2 tons of cocoa per year. Ivory Coast supplies 40% of the world's cocoa, but only receives less than 7% of the profits generated by the estimated $130 billion industry. That's because processing is mainly done in Europe. But small enterprises like Chocovi are trying to change this trend.
At this moment, it's a small trade. We don't have enough cocoa yet, so we are looking for any pods that are ripe for harvesting.
For Kwame, it's not just about local production. She sells chocolate in this mall in the capital Abidjan, and customers are impressed.
I tasted the chocolate. It's pure, it's natural. I especially like the box with the ginger cashew nuts. This box, with the national colors of Ivory Coast, it's wonderfully presented. I love it.
Oxfam says giant chocolate companies like Nestlé, Hershey and Lindt have made nearly $15 billion in profit since 2020. But as more people like Kwame enter the field, it's hoped that they'll reap higher dividends while cultivating great taste. Taiba Aiden, Africa Matters.
The UN says at least half of the world's indigenous languages will either be extinct or seriously endangered by the end of the century. In South Africa, was a widely used native language, but hope now rests on the only woman who can speak it. Emre Boz tells us how linguists and historians are racing to preserve it.
Katrina Isao is the only known fluent speaker of the native language. The 90-year-old represents a generation of South Africans that's withering away. Like many young girls her age, growing up in Northern Cape, Katrina was mocked for speaking in her mother tongue.
We were ashamed when we were young girls, so we stopped speaking the language. And when we were at home, we'd just speak Afrikaans and a little bit of the language with the grown-ups.
Was one of the native languages spoken by indigenous South Africans long before the country became a Dutch and later British colony in the 16th century. And for hundreds of years, South Africa's official languages were Dutch, English, and Afrikaans.
We got to the point where we have one speaker left of a language because during apartheid and colonialism, people were actually physically hurt. So I remember a woman telling me in Uppington that they were pinched whenever they spoke the language, and they would be told, you don't speak this language around here. So subsequently, they started associating the speaking of the indigenous language or their mother language, their mother tongue, to pain.
To preserve the language, Katrina began teaching to her grandchildren. In 2005, she co-founded a school with her granddaughter, Claudia Snyman, to help children in her community read and write the language. But it's a race against time as Katrina ages.
Oh, I'm very concerned. Actually, she hasn't been well lately. I told her, Grandma, you can't go anywhere now. The language isn't what it is supposed to be yet. We don't know everything yet, and we don't want the day when Uma is no longer with us, that all of Uma's work has been in vain.
Her work hasn't gone unnoticed at the University of Cape Town, where Katrina worked with professors and linguists to create first ever written alphabet and basic rules of grammar for teaching purposes.
I love my language. I love it a lot. And because of that reason, I don't want it to die. I want it to live on.
It's Katrina's final attempt at ensuring the language is taught long after she's gone. Emre Boz, Africa Matters.
We switch gears now and focus on Türkiye, which is preparing for the second round of its presidential election. The country has been a key partner to African countries with economic, humanitarian, security ties, and political ties also. Since 2003, Turkish embassies on the continent have almost quadrupled from 12 to 44, while 34 African countries have embassies in Ankara. Türkiye has actively pursued stronger ties with African countries through various political, humanitarian, economic, and cultural initiatives. The country's policy aims to foster equitable partnerships and enhance economic relations. Notably, Turkish companies have undertaken an extensive portfolio of over 1,200 projects across Africa, worth nearly $77.8 billion. And many African nations have been actively seeking security cooperation with Türkiye, leading a significant increase in arms sales. So how will polls in Türkiye likely impact the continent? Let's get more from Abdi Noor, Managing Director at Talafot Consulting Group. He joins me from Istanbul. Good to see you again, Abdi. Do you think Türkiye-Africa relations will be affected by the outcome of the upcoming elections, whatever the outcome is?
Yes, I think the outcome will affect the relations in several ways. We have seen Turkey has invested in Africa in the past 20 years in humanitarian and development projects, as well as business and trade-wise. So if a government, with the foreign policy with a ruling ACT party came to power, then we think that the relationship will continue and increase over the years. But as we have seen, as if like what the opposition has called, if they want to de-invest in Africa and move away, then that will impact the relationship in the next few years.
As you rightly mentioned, you touched on trade in your answer. Turkey-Africa trade has indeed been increasing. What impact is it having? And is that likely to change for whatever reasons?
The impact is that the trade volume has increased from less than 5 billion in 20 years ago to more than 40 billion now as we speak now. So that means Turkish investments in Africa have created jobs, have contributed to the economic development of the continent, and will have a very positive impact on the overall relationship between the two regions. So, the current government supports initiatives Turkish businessmen to invest in Africa, and as well as African business people to come and invest economically here in Turkey. So, if the politics and Turkish foreign policy towards Africa changes, we see that will have also an impact on that region as well, and especially on the economic and trade relations between the two sides.
Finally, how will the recent grain deal extension that Turkey brokered affect African countries?
Yeah, we have seen Turkey has brokered grain deal since the start of the conflict in Ukraine. Not the first time, but several times. We have seen a day before that Turkey has brokered. So if Turkey's foreign policy towards Africa and global South and developing world changes, this will also have an impact on that. But the grain deal is very important for Africa. Africa is facing food insecurity, famine, droughts. So this is one of the major achievements of the Turkish government, especially President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. And we will see this will impact the lives of Africa. And until the current conflict is addressed. So we will see this to continue, and a strong Turkey. Stable Turkey is good for Africa and good for the world.
And Abdul Noor Dahir, the Managing Director at Talafot Consulting Group, thank you so much for speaking to Africa Matters.
Thank you very much.
And finally this week, we explore Cape Coast on the southern shore of Ghana. It is believed that the ancient city serves as the first meeting place between sub-Saharan Africans and Europeans. Let's take a closer look. And that's our show for this week. Kindly share your thoughts and suggestions about the stories you've seen on this episode, or ideas on what you would like us to cover on Twitter using the hashtag #AfricaMatters. Feel free to reach out to me on my personal handle at @AdeshawaJosh. You can watch this episode and more on YouTube. Just search Africa Matters, TRT World. Like, comment, and share. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next week.